amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 16, printed in Part A of House Report number 118-261, offered by Mr. DeSaulnier of California.
Pursuant to House Resolution 838, the gentleman from California, Mr. DeSaulnier, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the social cost of carbon is an important tool that allows us to put an economic value on the cost of greenhouse gas emissions to society as they continue to grow. As we inch closer to the tipping point for being able to reverse the impacts of climate change, the social cost of carbon is even more important for us to know. This kind of analysis is used to evaluate policy proposals and helps to take into account the non-monetary cost of carbon emissions, like its impact on pollution, drought, public health, and more. As a real-world example, a social cost of carbon analysis can help more accurately measure the price of oil by taking into account the health and environmental impacts of emissions from oil refineries on nearby communities. By correctly valuing the damage of each additional ton of carbon dioxide emissions, we can use the real costs or benefits of raising or decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. Using the social cost of carbon now will not only provide massive financial savings in the future for individuals, businesses, and the government, but also help to better evaluate the significant public health impacts of climate change. In the district I represent, in the San Francisco Bay Area, we are continually hit by the impacts of climate-fueled wildfires and drought, among other disasters, as we've seen in the past year alone. The area I represent is a heavy fossil fuel impacted area. 5 oil refineries. It is the headquarters, my district, of the second largest American petroleum company, Chevron. We've got a lot of economic importance in this community. But we are also at the forefront of transitioning, making sure that we are as analytical and peer-reviewed in those objective reviews, including cost benefits, so we make the right decisions in this transition. This is why this is important. These disasters that we've been impacted by, direct and indirect impacts on public health, including physical injury, mental health impacts, and making chronic illnesses even worse, which puts extra burdens on individuals, families, and the medical system, locally, state level, and nationally. This only highlights the need to use all the tools available to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but in a thoughtful way, by having the best analysis possible, by knowing the true value of certain investments and policy action and objective criteria. We can make more informed decisions on how our action today will impact today and future generations. Addressing climate change takes a whole-of-government approach. And having been a former board member of the California Air Resources Board, having served under 2 Republicans and 1 Democratic governor, when we did these kind of analysis that were bipartisan, I know firsthand the importance of correctly evaluating the reduction of emissions on all angles. In that time, both Republicans and Democrats in California valued legitimate cost-benefit analysis. The board had to consider this by state statute that was signed by Ronald Reagan when he signed the California Clean Air Act, to consider all of these consequences. Unfortunately, the bill in front of us today prohibits the federal government from doing just this kind of carbon analysis on a cost-benefit basis. This is just another misguided partisan effort, unfortunately, to dismantle our work to address climate change in a thoughtful way that will continue to be detrimental to all communities, industries, and our businesses. My amendment would strike this prohibition, continue to allow for agencies to use the social cost of carbon in a cost-benefit way for one tool in a larger decision-making process. I urge my colleagues to support my amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman from Idaho seek recognition?
Claim time in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman from Idaho is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to this amendment to strike the provision in the bill prohibiting the use of social cost of carbon. The social cost of carbon attempts to monetize the impacts of greenhouse gas emissions. What it really means is that it's an easy way to increase the cost of a project or of anything that will produce emissions, like driving a car, to justify regulations or halting the activity because the costs outweigh the benefits. This is even more problematic because this monetary value has fluctuated wildly in past decades, from $1 to $190 per metric ton. This fluctuation tells me that the methodology and the metrics are fuzzy at best and seriously flawed at worst, and has lacked transparency. All of this is especially concerning given the social cost of carbon is used to issue job-killing regulations and halt energy and infrastructure projects in the United States, while the world's largest polluters are not being held accountable. For these reasons, I oppose this amendment and urge my colleagues to join the same, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from California.
I would just unexpectedly, respectfully disagree with my friend and colleague. As in all cost benefits, it takes time to make them more effective. In California, we're doing that as part of the tradition of the California EPA and CARB, but we work closely with the federal agencies, and then everyone benefits from it, whatever their position on energy and the effect of climate. And as I said, as somebody who's been involved with the fossil fuel industry and wants to make sure that there is a correct transition, and someone who views the impact of carbon very seriously and thinks we're at a very difficult time, these kinds of cost benefits, if done right, helps the argument.
The gentleman's time has expired.
With that, I will yield back.